Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast. We're the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined as always by our director of scouting and hat hair, Ian Kundle. Ian, welcome to the show. We've got a very special episode with Red Sox director of player development, Brayan Abraham, who had a terrific interview with us, over an hour, very generous with his time. I think the folks are going to like what we discussed with Brayan. We really went in depth on some things having to do with player development. I think it's going to be a really great kind of educational listen for a lot of folks of various. Look, if you're a beginner, if you're, really into this stuff and you've been following it for a while, I think there's something in there for everybody.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to talk to Brayan. It's always great, talking shop with him. And I think that, it's a good listen. We touched on a lot of subjects, and I think it's a really good, kind of inside how the process is and, kind of how the sausage is made. I think, we touched on a lot of things that I think that, people might kind of know that they're happening, but not necessarily how it happens or, what goes into it. And I think it's going to be a really fun listen.
Yeah, things we get asked about a lot. And hey, if you've got questions coming out of the interview, you can ask them. You can email them to podcast@soxprospects.com. We're not going to do any emails this episode. I think we punted on them last episode too, come to think of it. We're going to hit all those next episode. The interview is over an hour long, so we're just going to let the interview stand on its own. Next full episode, I should say, because this weekend is the MLB draft. More about that in a minute. But of course, a couple things up front. Support the show. A few ways you can do that. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it is that you listen to the show. You can spread the word, tell a friend, tell some random Twitter follow, tell the person on Facebook you follow because you went to high school with them and you haven't talked in 6 years. You should just reach out and tell them to listen to the show. And of course, we're still pushing strong on the Sox Prospects donation drive. If you like what we do, if you like the work we put in, if you like things like our interview with Brayan Abraham, we need you to step up and help support the site. We have a model where we don't have a paywall, but folks who are passionate followers and fans and listeners support us with their donations, either through soxprospects.com/donate if you want to make a one-time donation, as well as patreon.com/soxprospects if you want to support the show on a per episode basis and get some neat perks. I am caught up on the game updates we have recorded. However, we definitely owe, between Ian and myself, a fair number of game updates that we're going to get up there. And of course, you get neat information on the rankings, our behind the scenes, who was 61 to 70, our personal top 30s, things like that. So some neat perks if you support us on patreon.com/soxprospects. I guess I also have to give a shout out to our $5 level Patreon supporters up front because we're not going to do an outro after the interview. So those Patreon supporters are Kyle C., Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, Evan Kirkwood, Hurricanes 1, Chris Fox, James O'Hara, Nathan Kenyon, Andrew Wallen, David B., Ben Burnett, Al Mendel, Kevin Catrides, Ben and R.I., Paul Denyer, Lendl Martin, James B. McMahon, Stephen Gregory, James Bailey, Andreas Goldstrand, Corey Perrick, Forrest Perkins, Mark Herman, Aaron Meta, Jeff Harwood, Jimmy Mountain, Brian Cowan, Dusty G., Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Jeffrey Scruggs, Nicholas Staropoli, Bob Introne, Mike Kawano, Chris Bollier, Curtis Waltman, Michael Stewart, Keith Fox, Caleb Farron, John Kane, Andrew K., Tim Ware, Michael Murphy, Jason Stoneburner, Jack Monahan, Jason Parker, Etan Saab, and Ian, 3 new $5 level Patreon supporters since the last episode. That'd be Eric Peterson, Jeff Richardson, and Mike Mignosa. If I screwed that up, let me know, Mike, but I think that's how it would be pronounced. Thank you all for your support. And hey, if you want to join that list, donate, support the show at the $5 level on patreon.com/soxprospects. Ian, some really quick things up front that we should get to. Draft is coming up this weekend. We often get asked on Twitter, like, who are you looking at? Are you going to do a preview? Things like that. On years like, well, I guess first logistically, let's just tell people the draft starts on Sunday evening around 7. The Red Sox probably aren't going to pick until like after 9, I would guess.
I don't know. I think it's 5 minutes per pick or something.
And
and
they're running on MLB time. So,
because it's on TV. It's on ESPN this year. So,
that's right.
They'll probably give them a little more time to kind of, talk through everything and do how they kind of do with the NBA draft and stuff. So
Yep.
Yeah.
So starts on Sunday. I think that's just round one now.
It's one in the comp picks.
One in the comp picks. I don't think they do two on night one anymore.
I think it's 2 and 3 or Monday.
No, Monday.
Two to 10. Is it 2 to 10? Yeah, you're right.
I think it's back to being 2 to 10 on Monday, and then Tuesday is 11 to 20, and it stops after 20 now. As my cat goes crazy in the background, she's trying to chase her tail. Anyway, but yeah, that starts this weekend. We'll record a short episode on Sunday night reacting to the first round pick. The Red Sox pick at 24 is their first round pick. As a personal policy, when the Red Sox pick this far back, look, under the Chaim Bloom regime, especially, and Paul Taboni regime, they do not leak out who they're interested in. It doesn't get out.
No, they're one of the, I feel like, the better orgs when it comes to kind of keeping that stuff under the radar.
Yeah. I mean, even the Nick York pick, like, not only was Nick York off the radar, like, I think the on the radar, like, guys they were getting linked to, like, I'm not sure how interested they were or weren't, to put it that way. So yeah, it doesn't leak out. And listen to Jim Callis, Keith Law, Kylie McDaniel, Eric Longenhagen. They will tell you that after the first 15 picks, it's a crapshoot. A mock is a crapshoot,
especially this draft.
We
saw, like, with that trade the Braves and the Royals made. The Braves went out and bought a pick. Where is it? Or not bought, but they traded
for Drew Waters. Yeah,
Drew Waters and a couple other prospects. But it seems like, from like the 20 to 50 range, it's pretty static. So,
and actually that's the one thing. So Paul Taboni did have media availability this week. And the one thing, one really good reporter asked him about that he answered that was interesting was, just about this draft class. And he did kind of insinuate the same thing, that, like, the depth of it kind of almost between 24 and they pick again at 41 for the Judd Fabian comp pick.
Yeah, that's why they're in an interesting position with that extra pick.
Yeah, there's not as much of a drop off in talent level.
Yeah.
That particular area is strong. And that's why, like, when you see them getting linked to 2 or 3 players in mocks, like, there's just something to kind of, like, it just kind of tends to snowball once a player or two get mocked at a certain area. Like, they might be completely out on Jordan Beck. They might be completely out on Kumar Rocker. Some of these guys, we don't know.
Yeah.
But if they get linked to them once, suddenly they've been linked to that player.
Yeah. So. Well, and I do think so. The Red Sox pick at 24 in the first round, 41 in the second round. They don't have their second round pick because of the Trevor Story signing, but they do have a compensation pick at 79, which came over not from the Tigers, but they got it for Eduardo Rodriguez.
Oh, Eduardo Rodriguez. Yep.
And then they have all their other picks after that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I'm sure, we'll see them move some money around. They'll do some things. So I think that, yeah, it's just hard to kind of, like, predict who they're going to take at 24. It's, it's a who knows thing, but do you want to make a prediction so we can be very wrong, but if we're, just in case we're right, we can act like we knew what we were talking about?
I mean, we do know what we're talking about, right? Obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Why don't you go first?
My official prediction is that the Red Sox will take Jet Williams, who is a shortstop out of Rockwall Heath High School in Texas and is a Mississippi State baseball commitment. And my reasoning behind this is, yes, he has actually been linked to them, and I think Jim Callis had it in his last mock. But he just kind of fits the archetype of players they've targeted the last couple of drafts. When you look at Marcelo Meyer and Nick York, both are very hit tool driven high school infielders, really smart players, good makeup. Just kind of there's some safety with them with the hit tool, while also possessing upside. And I think that especially with York too, that was kind of like, they didn't really care, he's a little undersized, it's kind of a weird body type for that first round pick, that type of player. Williams seems kind of fit that, he's a really good hitter. But he's also tiny. He's like 5'8". And I don't know. I just think it kind of like they've had success developing those type of players in the past. And he kind of sounds like someone who could be around in the range. And as I said, it fits kind of the type of player they've targeted in the past. So why not? I'll have him going back to the well with a high school infielder.
I like it. It works. For me, I guess, everyone else in this range, they're almost all college guys. They're either all outfielders.
It's a
or
lot of
pitchers,
college outfielders
or indie ball guys. And I think I'm gonna back away. I told you I was gonna go
Boo.
with Kumar Rocker. I don't know. I don't see it. Just seems weird.
He doesn't strike me as the type of player they've targeted in the first round.
No.
If he like fell to their second round pick, yeah, 100% could see.
If he's there at 41, they'll make it work. I think, yeah.
Yeah, but
unless they think it won't, but I don't understand what
yeah.
kind of leverage he's got either.
Exactly.
Because, and I should mention 41, the Fabian pick, they can roll it over one more year.
Yeah, you get 2 years of protection.
You get 2 years.
Yeah.
Not that is the plan, but not that was the plan last year either. But
right. And just to mention, so their slot money for the entire draft, they have just over $8 million plus the cap. It's just under 8.5. And their first round pick is slotted at just under 3 million. Their second round pick is at 1.905. So they got it between those two picks. You're looking at almost $5 million. Like they could, if someone falls, they could definitely pounce with that type of money and kind of adjust. So it'll be interesting to see. And what is your official prediction? That will definitely be right.
Yes, we'll absolutely be right. Okay. I'm going absolute bat-ass crazy on this one. Okay. I'm going to go, and this is an extreme pick, and I doubt they're going to do it, but if I'm right, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to go with Louisiana State commit Robbie Snelling.
I have not heard of him. I'll just be honest.
He's 21st on Baseball America's top prospects list. He's a left-hander out of McQueen High School in Reno, Nevada. Just because I want to be able to call him Reno 911. And yeah, he's a LSU commit, 6'3", 220, left-hander.
So you have him taking a high school pitcher?
Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen, but it's just it's going to be so much more awesome if I'm right than if I just pick like a random like Chase DeLauder and they take him
if they take like Jordan Beck or something.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Or the other Tennessee outfielder Drew Gilbert.
Yeah.
And I can't see them taking a college pitcher in the first. I mean, I guess that'd be like the Tanner Houck pick, so maybe they could.
It's just,
like Cade Horton.
I was about to say he's the only
Cade
one
Horton would be
in
interesting.
that area.
Cade Horton would be very interesting.
He's got a lot of helium after his College World Series performance. He's also like super athletic too, which obviously, as you'll hear in the interview later, is something they really value with their pitchers.
Yes.
Yeah,
this is like Carson Whisenhunt. Like it's all college outfielders and college pitchers in that range. It's crazy.
I kind of I don't know why. I just think like the high school short, like the Jet Williams I mentioned, then another one like Cole Young out of Pennsylvania. Another
Jet
one.
Williams is a good fit. Jet Williams makes sense.
But yeah, like I mean, I don't know, like Connor Prelap could be pretty fun.
Prelip would be fun.
Yeah, because they took him a few years ago out of high school, and that was that draft class. We should mention too. They took Jordan Beck out of high school too.
Oh,
that was in the same draft class. Like that draft class was absurd. They nailed like their late picks that had no chance of ever signing. But yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, and we'll, as you said, we'll be on to react after the first round pick happens with a short episode, and then I think a little later we'll have a full recap, obviously after the draft finishes.
We won't be alone,
and we will have a guest, and you could probably guess who the guest is if you have been listening for a while, because
if you've been paying attention,
the same person every year.
yeah. So we're gonna have
that'll be a fun conversation. So
yeah. So yeah. Anyway, all right. So those are our picks. Do
you want to briefly discuss the transactions?
Not even the transactions, but just the happenings from the week. I mean, the two big things to me, Ian, are and we don't need to discuss this because it's just a nice thing that happened, was Tristan Casas finally started his rehab assignment in the Florida Complex League.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. He just stood at the plate and walked.
He walked twice and struck out.
Shocking,
once.
By the way.
Yeah.
That he walked.
No, I mean, he's not going to see Jack S to hit down there. Yeah. And the other thing was just the MLB debut and follow up of Brayan Bello, who struggled somewhat. And we previewed his debut, Ian. I think I should have said something at the time. I don't think I did, of just how much like he really was getting overhyped. Like the dramatic like Lion King music on the
that was funny.
Sox video.
That. I thought it was hilarious.
I thought it was too much.
All I know is that I apparently nailed my prediction of what would happen. Didn't realize that at the time, but someone on Twitter said I did, which obviously means it's right. So shout out to that person who gave me credit for being right.
In terms of what? The fact that he got hit a little bit?
Don't know.
Oh,
they just said I nailed it. So I was happy that they gave me credit for something. So I'm just going to take it and say I nailed it. But in all seriousness, I'm not worried. Like, and don't be worried.
No.
It means nothing on the great scheme of things. It's great experience for him. And I think it's going to show him, and kind of, I hope it's a launching point for him going forward, because I think it's shown him that, and this was something a scout said to me, who was watching the start, was, he's going to have to learn that you can't outstuff people in the big leagues. And it's something actually that Brayan talked about on the interview. There are certain pitches that you can throw in AAA that you can get away with, or that hitters will chase. And when you get up to the big league level, guys are just going to spit on that pitch. And, that's something that he's going to learn. And I think he's going to grow from it. And I think going forward, obviously, the stuff is still tantalizing. There's a lot of promise there. But I do think the expectations, kind of need to be managed for this year. He's still super young. He's still, learning his arsenal, as we talked about. Again, like, his two seam is a relatively new pitch. His command and control with that is still in the works. He's still harnessing his stuff, and going forward, I really like his long-term potential. But this year, there's definitely going to be some ups and downs, especially at the big league level.
Yeah, I mean, the dude started the year in Double-A. Like, that's a big jump from Double-A to the majors in one season. Not that he made it directly, and I know people are going to say, "Oh, well, Andrew Benintendi did it." Well, and I mean, it's all different. So yeah, not worried about Bello. He'll go back down to Worcester, work with Paul Abbott. He knows what he needs to do.
He'll be
now.
up again this year.
He'll be up again.
It's, I think it's just, matter of time.
Absolutely. And otherwise, I mean, I think that was really the biggest thing. I mean, there's a whole lot of, Chris Sale came back, which is great. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Caleb Ort came up.
Yeah. I was going to say, just on Sale, that, after seeing him, it's not surprising he didn't require another rehab start in Worcester. Like, I know the line was bad and he went viral because of the thing that destroying the TV, which is, who cares? That happens all the time.
Yeah,
it just usually isn't caught on camera. But it was the same thing I kind of said after I saw it. Like, his stuff was really good. He just had no clue where it was going. And it was, I posted the video. I think it was on my Twitter, and I think we posted on Instagram also. Instagram's at Sox Prospects, if you want to check that out. We got some great content going up there. It was 100% a mechanical thing, and if you watch the video, he knows it too. And he was opening up early front side, and just his line of the plate was off, and you could see him getting frustrated with himself, and pushing his shoulder in and being like, "Come on, like, stay on line." And he just didn't have it that day, but against the Rays and the MLB, he did. And for me, it was far more important that, the velo was up there. The changeup looked good again. Like, that was the best he's looked for me, velo or stuff wise, since, in several years.
Well, his velocity was above what it was last year.
Yeah. I mean, his velo was there. His changeup, which he just didn't have last year, is like, It was good again. Like, I think it was a pretty encouraging debut for him, and hopefully he can build on that going forward. And
hopefully the Red Sox start to get something resembling a healthy pitching staff in the coming days.
Exactly.
They're getting Eovaldi and Whitlock back on Friday, which will be huge. That'll probably push Valdez and Ort back down to Worcester, I would think.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
And then I think the only other one of note probably worth mentioning is that I guess there's two. Is one that Kike Hernandez has had, it seems like, a pretty big setback, and they kind of don't know what's going on, because his rehab assignment's been stopped. So I think, all those that were concerned about what's going to happen with Jarren Duran when Kike Hernandez comes back, we're not going to be talking about that for a while now.
Right. And this is why you don't really worry about it till it happens. Right.
Exactly.
So,
and then I think the other two was Thad Ward is now in Salem.
Yes. His rehab is moving up, where he might not be there long based on how his first Salem start.
Yeah. I think he's going to be up back in Portland within the next couple of weeks, which will be good. Hopefully I'll go up and see him when he gets back up there. And then the other one is Christian Arroyo back on the DL. So G Round's back in the big leagues and playing a big role against the Yankees. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. As Brayan says on the interview, he just looks like a different player since that first call up.
He just looks so much more confident and comfortable at the plate. And, you could see it when I saw him in Worcester in between that call up, the first one and the second one. And, hopefully he can kind of carry on and build from this. And, once he gets that taste of big league action, it really, gets him going, and he can start kind of just continuing what he was doing at the plate during that few weeks in between the two calls.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Like I said, we'll hit emails next time. I don't think there's too much else to talk about. So we'll just kick to our interview with Brayan Abraham, who is the director of player development with the Boston Red Sox. We talk about a lot of things. Talk about player development generally. We did plenty about specific players as well. I hope you all enjoy it. I guess just like I said, we're not going to do an outro. So really quick to get to our usual wrap up stuff. Follow us on Twitter. Follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. Follow Ian at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. And as Ian said, follow the site at Sox Prospects at Sox Prospects on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, as I mentioned early on, the donation drive is going. We are, I think, about 3/4 of the way ish towards our goal, but we need you to get there. So again, soxprospects.com/donate, patreon.com/soxprospects. We appreciate your support. And again, soxprospects.com/donate, patreon.com/soxprospects. Without any further ado, Ian, shall we kick it to Brayan? Let's do it. All right. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums Sunday night. All right, and we are now pleased to be joined after we've been trying to make this happen for a while now, but we're pleased to be joined now by Red Sox Director of Player Development, Brayan Abraham. And Brayan, I'm glad we're able to make this work. We've been emailing back and forth for a bit, and we were just talking before we started recording about how the person in your position, it's a 24-hour job. It's a gig that lasts all season, off season. You're a busy man, and we appreciate you making the time to join us and just talk about what you do, what's happening in the system, and hopefully getting into some things that'll be really enlightening and educational for our listeners. So we appreciate you hopping on, man.
No, thank you guys so much for having me. I know a lot of time and effort you guys put in for the website, and for a lot of the fans. Obviously the minor league side isn't as readily available, a little bit more so in 2022 than it was 10 years ago, but appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. And for a guy who you are now, I believe this is your 8th season with the Red Sox, right? Because it was like 4-2-2.
10th actually.
10th. Okay. Oh, because it was 2 in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So 10th year with the Red Sox, local Worcester native, coming from the area. And I guess maybe just to start, get into your background a little bit. You're from the area, St. John's, Holy Cross, went and worked with the Blue Jays for, I believe it was 6 years, right? And then came to work for the Red Sox. I guess maybe the first thing is, at what point did you decide you were going to go into baseball? And then at what point was it right away that it was clear that this was going to be a career path for you, as opposed to, as someone who had the just out of college job, that this is what I'm going to do for 2 years? At what point did it turn to, okay, no, this is going to become my vocation, and I'm going to do this going forward as my, in my career?
Yeah, I think like most athletes or, players of sport in high school and college, my hope was to continue to play at the next level. Unfortunately, I was a really bad Division I baseball player. At least offensively, I was lucky enough to be able to catch a little bit, and that ultimately was kind of the reason why I got an opportunity with the Blue Jays. I was unable to play my senior year. I had hurt my wrist, and JP Ricciardi, a close friend of our family, had asked me to come down to spring training, basically just catching the bullpen. They had needed an extra body, catch the bullpen, maybe throw a little batting practice, basically just to be an extra set of hands for the staff down there. Went down in 2007, caught in the bullpen a little bit, figured out I could throw batting practice, threw a little bit of batting practice, and really just kind of soaked it all in. I thought this was going to be a month and a half type opportunity. Got to meet a lot of the staff. John Gibbons was the manager. Brian Butterfield was the third base coach at the time. So we had a natural connection as a Maine native. So right away, it was a person that kind of really looked out for me. My uncle was the assistant trainer at the time. So he had been there for 6 years. So there's obviously a family connection, but also someone who really looked out for me and made sure that when I did something I was not supposed to, I was made very well aware of. But it was nice to have someone there that I could ask questions to. And then, Alex Andropoulos, who was their bullpen catcher and still is actually, was really someone who I think really talked to me about being around the clubhouse, being around Major League Baseball players, just really working hard and kind of being available. And, I was in college, and all of a sudden I was in spring training with the Toronto Blue Jays of Roy Halladay, AJ Burnett, Frank Thomas, Greg Zahn, Troy Gloss. I mean, there were some big names at the time, and I was 23 maybe years old, and I was in awe at times. Long story short, at the end of spring, JP had said, we're looking for this video intern, or not internship, but a video role, kind of do some simple stats, do some video scouting. Would you be interested? And, without hesitating, I said yes. And I'll never forget, he said, if you had to think about it, this job wasn't for you. And next thing I knew, I was going to Detroit with the major league team, and kind of progressed with the Blue Jays. It wasn't video. I thought it was actually going to be video cameraing, recording the games.
Sure.
It was not that. It is, bats, which I think most people know now, what are all these video programs that players use. It was basically the early stages of that. And I basically did, kind of provided some simple stats for the coaches, really learned as I went. I went to scouting school my second year, ended up kind of doing the video advanced program for the Blue Jays, and be quite honest, was very underqualified. I was watching video on players and providing scouting reports for our players, and just kind of learned on the fly. I was really lucky to have a lot of good coaches, major league coaches, a lot of really good players that I learned from, listened to. It was really just a fly on the wall in a major league clubhouse for those 6 years with the Blue Jays. Caught in the bullpen through bag practice. Just kind of really lucky to be able to do a bunch of different things and be available for different people at different times, and just made myself available to be able to do that. So, John Farrell came in, really formed a great relationship with John. He kind of is the one who introduced me to player development. I really honestly did not know much about it because I had only been with the major league staff, focused on the major league team. Obviously spring training, knew about the minor leagues, but, quite honestly, didn't really know exactly how it worked. And he really encouraged me to kind of ask some questions about it, pursue it a little bit, thought that I'd be good at it, interested in it. And then in 2012, I believe, the Blue Jays sent me down to instructional league. I left the major league team a little bit early that year, just spent a month and a half down in instructional league with some of the staff down there, and really just kind of helped out through bag practice, hit some fungos, kind of learned what they were doing. And at the end, I kind of put together, I guess, my own player development manifesto, which I still have, about what I thought was important about player development. Gave it to Alex Anthopoulos, thinking it was, a great thing that I put together. Probably nothing new, but after that trip was really kind of where I was like, this is something I'm very interested in. The relationships, the ability to help learn and teach and help grow players to ultimately help allow them to make an impact in the major leagues was really exciting to me. And then John Farrell went to the Red Sox, and at the end of that season, there was a lot of uncertainty. At the end of 2012, I got married in 2012 to my wife in Toronto, and I'll never forget. I had interviewed for a scouting position with the Indians. They'd asked permission on me. I interviewed. I ended up not getting the role. And then the day after Thanksgiving, I believe, I was actually told I was not going to be renewed by the Blue Jays, and I was in shock. And it was just a huge reality check. It was really probably, some of the toughest time in my life, just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. This was, I had been doing this for 6 years. What am I going to do? All my friends were off had big jobs, and they went to grad school, went to medical school. And now all of a sudden I was, out on the street, for lack of a better word. Luckily, I think, the relationships I had with John, Torrey, Brian Butterfield, they all ended up going to the Red Sox. And, I think a month and a half or so later, John had called me and said they had a bullpen catching job available. Not something that I was necessarily focused on trying to do, but he felt like it would just be a good opportunity to get my foot in the door, learn some of the advanced process, and, kind of grow. And jumped at the opportunity, obviously, to go home to Boston. Basically, once in a lifetime experience. And, in 2013, I was a bullpen catcher. We ended up winning the World Series. That's, probably the best year of my entire life. We had my first son and won the World Series. Got to be, wear a uniform, be in the dog pile when we won. Obviously the marathon bond was such an incredible year. Stayed in 14, and then after 2014 got interviewed to be assistant farm director by Ben Sherrington and Ben Crockett. I think, one of the things that I don't forget is like the willingness for them to think outside the box and interview a bullpen catcher. Even though they knew my background, just not the norm. I think probably you'd say that, now that's probably a little bit more common, to think that someone in the clubhouse could, transition to the front office fairly easily. But at the time, that's not something that honestly I had even thought of. And to be, asked to interview for that role and eventually get it and kind of transition at the office was, obviously a game changer for me, and just right place, right time. And, I guess the rest is kind of transitioned from assistant farm director of minor league ops to now farm director. That's probably long winded, but that's kind of it.
No. So did you tell them about the Brian Abraham player development manifesto? Like, did that help?
I mean, John knew. I think
them?
I owe so much to John Farrell. To have someone in such a high position who had been a farm director, who had been a major league manager, to really provide a lot of insight and guidance in a lot of ways in a career for a young person. I think whenever you're young, people ask you, "What do you want to do?" I just wanted to work in baseball. At that point, I just wanted to go to the park every day. I have a passion for the game. Obviously playing I did, but there's something about this game that I really truly love, and I know it's not for everyone, but for me, it is. It's it. And I think to have someone in your corner to whether it be some suggestion to Ben or to Croc that this would be something I'd be interested in or something I'd be good at, to have someone be able to kind of push me in that direction was really valuable, and something I'll always owe to him in that time.
Well, not necessarily just to hammer on the manifesto, but I like the idea that you were clearly thinking at a very early point here about how player development could and should be done, apparently. And what were some things that you seized on early on about, whether it was something the Jays were doing or the Red Sox were doing or weren't doing, that you really honed in on immediately as being really important in player development?
I think one of the things that I felt like was really important, the Blue Jays were kind of transitioning this. Anthony Iapoce was actually their hitting coordinator at the time, who's now our senior hitting coordinator. I thought one of the things that they were starting to do really well, something I felt very strongly about, was just the structure, the consistency from top to bottom. Little did I know I'd get to the Boston Red Sox and realize that they were probably years ahead of where maybe some other clubs had been or what I had thought other teams were. I think you go back to the Indians days, John Farrell as a farm director, Mike Hayes and Ben Sherrington. I mean, there's some big high-end names that have done this role for the Boston Red Sox, and to come here and see, I had all these ideas like, oh, wait a minute, they've already done this. But it was actually, in some ways, it was great on my end to say, okay, well, at least some of my thoughts that I had felt like were important are important, and the Boston Red Sox are doing them, and they have one of the best farm systems in all of baseball. So I think just the consistency, the structure, fundamentals, I think, are incredibly important. Having young players come up, understanding what it takes to be a Boston Red Sox player at a championship level, because the reality is playing in Boston is different than playing in everywhere else. When we're competing, when we're developing these players, we're developing them to play in Game 7 of the World Series, not to play in Game 162 and go home. So I think there's a different level of expectation that, I think we have, but also the fan base and ownership has as well. We're expected to win. So everything we do, whether it be, infield, outfield, whether it be our hitting program, our pitching program, I think they're all prepared to have these guys play at the top level with high expectations, with pressure, with the game on the line in a lot of ways. I know it's a bit of a figure of speech, but when you're pitching in the ninth inning in Worcester, that's every inning when you're in Boston. And I think that's important, to realize. And I think when I was with Toronto early on, I thought mostly bigger picture, just like, I want to have good teachers. I want to have, I think relationships are incredibly important. I think when I realized that player development is what I really love, and I still love, is it's about people. And at the end of the day, we can have the most information, we can have, advanced information, we can have diagnostics, we can have stats, all those things. But if you can't build the trust and relationships with the players to help them make adjustments, to help them buy into what we're trying to do, then it's really hard to get them to develop into their, maximum player that we think they could be. So that to me was something really special. It's funny. My wife says I'm not a people person, yet that's my job. So I feel like within baseball, within the clubhouse, that's very comforting to me. It's very easy for me to go talk to coaches and managers and players. That's just something I really enjoy doing, and building those relationships where, I can talk to a player about their personal life and how they're doing at home, but also about maybe what they're doing on the field. And I think having those relationships and building those is something where, hey, we want to be available and here for you guys, because I really think, coming to the Red Sox, it's really showed me how important the family aspect is. It's a big organization, but at the same time, it has a genuinely small feel. And I think there's a lot of people that really pull for each other. There's people that have been here for a long time. And that family piece is something that I don't think, John Henry takes lightly at all. I know Heim doesn't. That's a really important piece of this organization. And I think if you ask players or staff that left here, that would be something that is pretty adamant when they'd be pretty adamant about when they leave here. So those are things that are really important that have kind of carried over. And I think as you become more in a leadership role, you kind of realize the micro piece that you're dealing with kind of on a day-to-day basis, but not forgetting the bigger aspect and pushing the whole department and organization forward.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a good point to transition into just how this works, because I think, fans, especially, look, our listenership, right, is going to be a certain subset that already has some idea of what's happening, or at least I would think. But I do think that even among those fans, there's still a little bit of it's not a mystery, but the understanding of really how player development on a day-to-day or even at a macro or micro level works, because there's a player development staff. There's you, and there's, blank, player development, plenty of people who have those titles right in the media guide. And then there's, the on-field staff at the affiliates, which, by the way, we're seeing that expanding, which, seems to be a very, clear push to kind of, provide more coaching, more opportunities to give, that instruction to players. And then you've got, your roving instructors and coordinators, and you've got, Sean Havlin and the folks that are just in Chris Mears and in the pitching program. How does all of that come together I guess we'll start maybe just to start at the macro level of, like, is there an organizational philosophy that comes from, I guess, where, and how does it get pushed down, or how does it get disseminated, and how does that work versus just hey, here are some ideas, and, here's 180, players on the domestic reserve list and our affiliates that are going to have 180 different things they need to be told and helped with. I guess just how does that come together?
Good question.
And then he went on for the next 4 hours. No, I mean, obviously there's a lot that could go in there, but
yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier. It's great to come to an organization, and Ben Crockett was the farm director here for an extended period of time, and before for him, Hayes, the foundation that they put in place in terms of just what is expected, a lot of our organizational philosophy, sometimes just as simple things as just, disciplinary actions and what we're expecting out of our players, whether it be respect on time, like some simple things, but when you're dealing with at times 17, 18, 19-year-olds, those things matter. You end up becoming, you're teaching them about being young people, not as well as being young baseball players. So there's a balance of that. But I think a lot of it comes down to, structure and continuity and consistency. We certainly have a lot of different areas, especially now, but having it work from the major league group down to the minor league group, having the same philosophies that Dave Bush and Pete Fatsi are talking about with their players, we're talking about that all the way down in the DSL. And granted, it's not going to be the exact same message, but I think the goal to get them to that point is really what it is. Whether it be, obviously a conversation with JD Martinez is going to be a little bit different than a conversation we're having with Miguel Blaze. But as he progresses, that conversation will expand and continue to grow. And eventually when he's with Pete Fatsi, it's like, oh, like I've been doing this my whole career. Now I can transition to the big leagues and I can worry about being Miguel Blaze and not have to worry about this coach is telling me something completely different than I learned in AA. Mm-hmm. And I think that's incredibly hard. I think that, the layers that we have, the communication that we have a bunch of different communication channels where we are tracking almost everything we do, objectively, subjectively, conversations that we're having, adjustments that we're making. And those are happening on different discussion boards, different, one-off conversations that are happening. Some of it, again, is the macro side about maybe a mechanical change that we're trying to figure out for the long term. And some of it might be a day-to-day thing like, hey, this guy's pitch usage was this particular outing. How come he threw X number of fastballs and X number of curveballs? We really need him to work on his changeup more. So all those types of things happen. I think the coordinator, I guess ultimately it falls on me in terms of the day-to-day. I'm very lucky to have someone like Ben Crockett and, other people within the office, Heim, DOH, and Eddie Romero that have been, have been in this organization for a long time. Eddie, obviously, on the international side provides a lot of insight, and Croc provides a lot of insight from just doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like the actual day-to-day of player development, it's myself, Chris Stacio, obviously Sean Havlin running the pitching side, I talk to probably as much as anyone. But that the conversations that we have on the bigger picture end up kind of going to the coordinators, keeping them in the loop, and then obviously the immediate day-to-day, what's happening on the ground conversations with the manager and then the affiliate staff. So, our coordinators rove throughout the year. They're making sure the work that is being done, the goals that we have set for each player, kind of being followed by the affiliate coaches, and that they're making progress. Again, tracking everything, making sure those adjustments are being made, making sure the conversations that need to be had about each player are being had. And then they report back, I guess, to myself, and we kind of it's a system that goes from one person to the next. In some ways, a game of telephone, but at the same time, we track all that to make sure that there's not lost in translation information. So it is a lot. That's probably, I think this is honestly the question you asked is honestly, I think probably the hardest thing about player development, and with the expansion of staff, with the amount of players we have. We have foundational philosophies that we want for every player, but at the same time, there's 180 players that have 180 different development paths. So it's those balances of making sure that, hey, the younger players are creating their foundation of being, a consistent professional baseball player. And then it's the AAA when we're really breaking down, the differences of what Connor Wong needs to do to be an effective big leaguer on a daily basis. So what Jeter Downs needs to do if he goes up and he's a, player off the bench playing once every 3 days. So there's all different levels of it. And our staff, we have such a good staff. I feel like they don't get enough credit, honestly. The coordinators, Chris Stacio, Patrick McLaughlin in the office, Harry Roberson and Jordan Elkery also working as development rovers and coordinators. Just the amount of conversations and communication they have, the ability, and Spencer Bangor, who I should make sure I mention as well, who works on the analytical side. Whether it be tracking information, red flags. Just paying attention to everything that happens, because one thing, especially, there's things that happen every day, and sometimes something that happened one day might seem insignificant, but it could make a huge difference in someone's career, and that's really on all of us to make sure that we're tracking and making sure of, and pushing guys to get better. And sometimes it's not always a path forward. Sometimes there's step back. Sometimes it's failure. And I think all of our staff knows just because we make an adjustment with the player and it doesn't work, doesn't mean it's not successful. It doesn't mean that try is not going to be successful down the road. Sometimes failure is just as important as success. So it's really hard. It really is. Like I said, the communication piece and tracking information with all the different departments, medical, strength, sports science, nutrition. There's just so many different areas now. If we don't have those communication channels, then I think that's where we can fall behind. And that's something we're always working on trying to improve. That's one of the hardest things to do. But like I said, the staff that we have, the amount of time and effort they put in, the care they have for the players is really, I think, what sets us apart.
And I guess on that day to day, when there's I don't know if it's a decision, but when you've got a development point for a specific player. So like, for example, one thing that pops to mind is over the past week or two, you've had a few guys, play at some new positions, some of which, I'm sure it's not like, hey, play this guy at short tomorrow or whatever, like, let's try it. These are things that I'm sure are in the works for a while, but if it's that, or this guy needs to, really needs to implement a swing change, we need to maybe get someone in to talk to him or something, and again, I'm speaking extremely generally here. No one listening read into what I'm saying, but how does that come together? Is that a conversation you have, Iggy, you're talking to Iggy Suarez, or you're talking to, Montz, or you're talking to, of course, all the former players, the ones coming to mind, but, is it just, conversations that happen in the office? And I'm sure it's different every time, but is it just kind of a group conversation? And then, at some point, like, hey, someone just says, hey, let's pull the trigger on this, or how does that kind of, and again, I know it's probably different every time, but
yeah,
how would that come together?
I think every situation is different, whether it be some of the bigger meetings we have with our group, we talk about certain players that, hey, maybe at this point in the season, we maybe try someone at a different position. Maybe it's when it gets to X month, maybe it's a chance to see if this person is able to play second base, shortstop, and third base. Maybe it's a chance for this person to see, get some time in the outfield. Some of it is to try to maybe get more at bats and get them in the lineup. Sure. Some of it is because we want to create some value and some versatility for that player. We feel like they can do it. So those conversations, I think, have kind of had their ongoing. I think when you want to implement those things, it might be a conversation that I'm having with our rovers and saying, hey, what are your thoughts here? Whether it be Darren Fenster or Corey Wimberly, do you think this person is able to do this? Let's get some early work with these guys and see how they react, see how they move. And then we kind of progress into the game situation. But those are conversations I have with the managers as well. Like, hey, what do you think here? Based on the roster, can this person get X amount of playing time in this position? If we do this, how does it affect this? But those are going on daily, really, on a daily basis. But then we have, whether it be bigger Zoom calls with just the roving staff, they were talking some of these bigger picture things. Mechanical adjustments, I think we rely a lot on our rovers dealing with our affiliate staff kind of on the ground. When our rovers go into an affiliate, they're working hand in hand with our pitching coach or our hitting coaches. They're in the cage, they're in the bullpens, and they're seeing this work being done. So I think that's when a lot of those conversations happen, whether it be organically or questions pop up and say, hey, how come this guy's doing this? Have you thought about doing this? And then ultimately, when we decide to make a decision, it's, here's the decision we want to make. Why are we making that decision? And what ultimately is the goal? And I think balancing all those types of things, sometimes if we're going to make this, if we're going to make a mechanical adjustment, what else is it going to affect? If we're going to do this with his hands, is this going to affect his lower half? Is it going to affect his approach because I feel like he needs to be more aggressive? Whatever it may be.
Sure.
Those are all different conversations that we have, and then ultimately we decide on a plan and put that plan on paper, and then obviously track that to see whether or not there could be success or failure. And I think that's again another hard thing to do in terms of timing when you're dealing with the season and guys go in and out of slumps. The playing time is is a little bit more difficult now because we have bigger rosters.
Sure.
We have the day off. So I think there's a lot of different balancing of at bats, of innings, and trying to figure out what we're doing on a daily basis. But I think one of the hardest things and one of the most important things to do is the day-to-day adjustments by players, whether it be pitch design, whether it be approach conversations with our players, like some things that guys can work on in the work that they're doing on a daily basis. That's some of the times we see, I think, some of the most improvements, whether it be, you look at some of the guys who have, improved some of their pitches, that's just pitch design that they're working on in the bullpen with our dev coach, with our pitching coach, and maybe with the coordinator to focus specifically on improving sweep to their slider. And I think those are things that kind of just happen on a daily basis that a lot of people don't see, but it's a grind to do that. But it's also, I think, some of the reasons why you can turn an average minor leaguer to maybe a minor league that could be major league depth out of the big league bullpen. You got looking at like a guy like John Schreiber, some of the small adjustments that he was able to make on the personal side, the work he put in, some of the work he put in with Paul Abbott at AAA, and now he's obviously a huge piece to our major league bullpen these days.
Yeah, actually, I had a question for later on, which was kind of building off what you just talked about. When someone you have like a minor league pitcher, say like someone like Shane Drohan, for example, and this year I think his changeup has taken a pretty big step forward. Where does that come from? Is that starting at the top with with Sean Havland, or is that more something him working with the pitching coach directly in Greenville has made those improvements? Did it start in the offseason with him? How does that process kind of like develop or work?
I think some of it is some internal evaluations, with our analytical group and flagging certain things that we feel like we can make improvements on, whether that's based off of that particular pitcher, whether that be his arm angle, whether it be how his pitch particularly move, and then comparing them to other pitchers, major leaguers that do similar things that we feel like we can make some adjustments that can improve something. And then, that conversation goes with Javi as well. Like, hey, we want to make this adjustment. One, is this even physically possible? Two, can we at least try it? And then how will it affect other things we do? I think one of the best things, I think we all know, but one of the things I think Chaim has done such a really good job of is allowing, making failure a normal piece of what we do, and trying new things and being aggressive with certain players in certain situations. Just because we try something that doesn't work, again, doesn't mean that that's a failure. That could be a huge success. And that could lead to something else. Maybe a pitcher is working on a particular pitch with a certain pitch grip, and his pitch does something that we're not expecting, but maybe it's a good thing. So I think that type of thing is really important. I think our staff has really run with that. But yeah, I think our analytical group with Javi, and then then that goes down to a conversation with our pitch coach, the development coach, which we've added has been really helpful with some of this, providing the analytical information on the ground, having that conversation with our pitching coach live in the bullpen, providing data and information to specifically make adjustments with a player, whether that be how he holds the ball, whether it be how hard he throws something, all those different things that can make an adjustment that we can, again, pitch design, how you can affect a particular pitch for better or for worse. So there's a large trial and error there. But there's also, I think, one of the areas that brings the most excitement, because players can see things change because they move their hands on the baseball. It's something that they've never done before. And it's also a balance too, because guys don't like to be uncomfortable. And I think that's a hard thing in player development, trying to get guys to try new things and trying to get them to push through the failure to let them know that ultimately they could have success. Like Shane, I think one of the things that we really pushed to have him throw his changeup to left-handed hitters. And, that's sometimes just really a mindset that has nothing to do with the physical side. That's just him being aggressive at throwing that pitch to a left-handed hitter. He gets that swing and miss down and in, and all of a sudden you have a effective pitch versus left-handed hitter that, really wasn't utilized in the past. So, that's not a mechanical thing. That's a mindset thing that I think, someone like Bob Kipper was really able to push towards him. And we've seen a lot of that pay dividends this year for him.
Nice. And then, one thing that you did kind of allude to there that I was curious about is the interaction we've talked about almost downward with player dev, but upward with the rest of the front office with, Heim down to BOH and Eddie and Raquel and everyone else who's up there. And of course, Ben's still around. As far as decisions that are made in terms of, like, one thing we get a lot is like who decides a guy is getting promoted, like, because there's this tendency of anything that happens in an organization, it's Dave Dombrowski, Ben Sherrington, Heim Bloom, right? It's the Red Sox pick Marcelo Meyer, it's Heim Bloom. They develop Marcelo Meyer, whoever. How do decisions go? How do decisions go up to them, from them? How much of it is just, for example, a promotion? Like, I'm sure Heim Bloom is not necessarily giving his feedback on whether or not to promote Nico Cavadas to Greenville, right? But I don't know, maybe it's getting run up to him or something. I don't know. How do these things go up? Who's involved in these decisions? Or there's like that. There's, I guess similar but different would be, feedback on guys who might get moved. We are coming close to trade season. What's the interaction like going upward in your position?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about our front office is everyone's invested in player development. So everyone is paying attention. Everyone is very aware. And, there's a lot of questions that are asked about what we're doing and how we're doing things, which I think is really, a testament to the excitement that we have for the players that we have. That we have a lot of talented players. For better or for worse, I'd say probably at the end of the day, I'm the one who's making those decisions on the minor league side. There are certain situations or movement that, it's a conversation just with PD leadership. I feel like one of the things that's really important is being transparent with the rest of the people in the office, and especially those above me. Hey, we're doing this. This is the reason. Just want to let you know that this is the plan, and here's why we're doing this. So I think, a reason for why we do things is incredibly important. We just don't say, hey, like this, look, player A should go up to AAA just because we think he should. I think it would be fun for him. There's some of it is roster related, certainly. I'm sure there are plenty of moves that people say, well, I don't understand why this person went here. Well, sometimes it's just because, we need a body. That's the reality of minor league baseball. And some of it is, obviously we are promoting particular players or demoting particular players because we feel like they're ready. And there are certain, performance indicators that we have that we track internally that say, hey, we feel like this player is at this particular point and it's time for him to move. But I also think that player development is evolved in the sense that, you don't necessarily need like X number of at-bats to say this guy's ready. That is certainly great. I think we always are going to look at previous players and when did this person move, and this person has had success. So this person is relatable. So we're gonna probably keep this player on a similar path. I think that's one of the best things about baseball because it's statistically driven. You can look at games, you can look at bats, you can look at all those things. But I also think if there are certain things that player can continue to work on and develop at the next level, and they are doing things really well at the current level, sometimes you just can't improve those at a lower level. You need the challenge. You need to be pushed to the next level to get to the areas that you need to improve upon. If I need a player to work on his changeup and A ball, and no one can hit his fastball and slider, it's hard to tell him to keep throwing his changeup when he's dominating everywhere else. So he needs to go up to that next level to maybe use those three pitches. So I think there's different situations. Again, I think one of the best things about our office is that they empower myself and our staff. Bigger promotion conversations. Again, I think there's just it's why are we doing this? Why is now the time? Why is this right? What is the plan for this person moving forward? If this starting pitcher moves up, is he going to be in the rotation? Is he going to get every fifth start? Is he going up to piggyback? If this position player goes up, where is he batting in the order? Why do you feel like now's the time? What position is he going to play? So those are all things that I think that we just naturally prepare for Heim and BOH and Croc and Eddie that I want to make sure I'm providing. And hey, they provide insight as well. Like sometimes it might be like, hey, what do you think about this guy? He's been doing this amount of time. Have you guys talked about promoting him? I mean, and those conversations about movement are happening probably more often than you could imagine. I think the natural inclination is to always push guys up. And I think I've learned this from Croc. Croc's incredibly patient, and I'm amazed how patient he is. And I think that's one of the most important things as a farm director. It's balancing the excitement to move, one of your top prospects to the next level, with also making sure that he has done what he needs to do where he is, so he can have that success, not only for them this year or next year, but for his entire career. And that's, I think, one of the lines that we have to kind of balance. But yeah, it's certainly a group effort. At the end of the day, I'd say I'm the one who's making that decision, but it's not something that is just by myself. It's a group conversation and a group discussion. But I'm calling the manager and saying, hey, here's the plan. This is what we're doing. And I, kind of a stamp of approval type thing, which again, for better or for worse, for fans, that's how it works. But again, we have a lot of important voices and a lot of really invaluable insight from our hitting group, from our, Ryan Jackson, our field coordinator, from people in the office. And I think it really works well. There's not a decision that is made while I am making the decision. There's not a decision made that is only made by me. And I think that is really what I think drives our player development system.
Nice. I know we don't have you forever, although I'm sure we could make this go, the aforementioned 4 hours if we wanted to, but I don't think we want to let you go without, definitely asking about some of the guys in the system right now, which, it seems overall that this year has mostly been positive. I mean, there's not a whole lot of true, not that we would ask or say this necessarily, but there's no true, like, what the hell is going on here type guy that comes to mind. And I guess kind of starting at the top, just kind of getting your thoughts on how a few guys have been this year. Obviously there's the newest first rounder in Marcelo Meyer, a guy who a lot of people are excited about, has certainly, dealt with some injuries in Salem, but has had success in terms of what you're seeing from him as a first year guy with a lot of expectations on field. Has, he more or less been what you all have expected you'd see out of him? And are there any particular development points that, you think that he is working on that are a focus right now? Or is it just kind of year one in baseball, year one in pro ball, let's get out there and see it and we'll go from there?
I think that's certainly some of it. We just want him to play and get used to pro ball. That's definitely part of it. I think he has come as advertised. He's a complete player. He's a 5-tool player. I know that. I feel like that's not used as much anymore, just because there's not as many 5-tool players. But in terms of a player who can impact the game in every way, he is that. He has the leadership qualities, the off-field qualities. He's bilingual. He's a leader. I mean, there's just so many things that he does really well. He has a very simple approach offensively, but is able to hit the ball. He hits contact, hits for power, drives the ball to all fields. And defensively, he's a smooth shortstop. He's got hands. He has lateral movement. He has arm strength. All those types of things. So a lot of it is just consistency. A lot of it is handling the ups and downs of pro ball. He went through a bit of a funk after he came back off the wrist, and I think it's being able to make those adjustments and get back to where he feels most comfortable. And that to me is what we talked about a little bit earlier with the process and having that started at a young age. When he came in last year, it's, hey, what is your routine? What is your plan on a daily basis? When things go bad, you need to have something that you can go back to that knows that it's going to make you feel right, because you're not going to feel great every time. You're not going to be 100% physically, you're not going to be 100% mentally, but if you can stick to your routine and stick to that process, you'll be able to go out and have, a solid 4 at-bats and make the plays in the field. So, he's an incredibly exciting player. He's the type of guy you want to, if you're a fan, you wait to go to the bathroom to watch his at-bats, because he's just so exciting. And a great kid. He's a hard worker. He's a good listener. I hate using the word coachable, because that makes it seem like we're telling him what to do. I think that's it's a process that we're working together with the players here. This is Marcelo providing insight, and we're providing insight and feedback. And it's like, hey, here's what we think. What do you think? We feel like this can help. Do you think it can help? And hey, maybe there's might be some differences here and there, but ultimately, it's kind of coming together to find what's best for that particular player. But for lack of a better word, he is incredibly coachable, just a really good kid to be around. And I'm excited to see him grow within this organization.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it kind of naturally transitions to another young guy who's on that roster, and that, I mean, I guess that entire infield is interesting with between Paulino, Bonacci, and Blaze Jordan. And I mean, we have to appease the internet here and ask about Blaze a little bit. Kind of someone we thought of before we hopped on, but a guy who obviously, came in as, this is the guy with the pop here. Although being in the same lineup as Nico Cavadas maybe got overshadowed on that a little bit. But as far as what you're seeing out of Blaze Jordan this year and his, I mean, I guess it's technically his first, no, because his first full at an affiliate, as I guess is the way to put it. What are you guys seeing out of him, out of adjusting at third and first and getting used to playing every day at an affiliate at the plate and improving as the season goes on as well? How are you liking what you're seeing out of him down in Salem?
Yeah, obviously a ton of power. He really had a incredibly strong June for us. I think some things for him is just a high school player, younger player, consistency with his body, some of his off-field work, getting into a workout routine. All these guys, not everyone comes from a program where they're going to be working on that or has the resources to be able to do that. So I think just getting someone on that to be able to compete for a full season, he realized that last year, and then coming this off season into this year is something that he was prepared to do. And I think, some of that, the agility, athleticism that comes with playing both sides, third and first. So he continues to improve on the defensive side. Obviously the bat is the calling card. I've always felt like, the numbers don't necessarily back this up, but I think his approach is better than maybe people give him credit for. He doesn't swing at a ton of pitches out of the zone. I think he almost is forced to chase pitches because of bad pitching, and he is over aggressive. I don't know if necessarily think it's because of lack of knowing the strike zone. And you've seen that a little bit more so in Salem, the ability to drive pitches within the strike zone. And obviously some of our internal metrics that we use, he's one of the top in our organization in terms of, numbers when the pitches are in the strike zone and he makes contact with them, he hits the ball incredibly hard. So continuing to focus on that, a lot of our young guys really, obviously the mechanical side, but having the approach and having an understanding of a professional strike zone really can make hitters so much better as they progress through the system. Because if you know the strike zone, it allows you to take pitches that you shouldn't swing at and drive pitches that you can drive. And I think understanding who you are as a hitter, what pitches you can drive with the understanding of the strike zone really allows the guys that have the talent to succeed. And I think we're seeing that with him now in Salem. And, again, another kid who is a good listener, works incredibly hard. And, we've seen some of that happen so far in Salem. Still, still plenty to work on for him. And I think he'd probably admit that as well, especially on the defensive side and even still on some of the chase. But I think we've seen a lot of progress so far from FCL to this year.
Maybe it makes sense to kind of work up the ladder a little bit, and arguably the kind of positional player of the year in the system so far has been Cedar Rafaela, or at least in terms of a guy who came from off the radar for a lot of people to, I'm seeing on Twitter people think that want to put him in the outfield right now practically, which is of course crazy, but selected to play in the futures game. We knew what he could do, I guess, thanks to last year. And I had him in the back of my head as we're talking earlier about putting guys at different positions. Who knows? Maybe you'll find maybe the best defender in the system by throwing him out in center field. But as far as Rafaela now, we know he's got the glove, obviously a great arm too, and he's having a terrific season at the plate. What do you see based on what he's done this year as keys for him to figure out what role he will play in a major league roster in terms of what he can become, and what do you think are the focus points for him at this point in his development?
Yeah, he continues to exceed expectations in a lot of ways. I think for those of us who have seen him from the DSL till now, again, he's probably exceeded our expectations, but he's always been unique. He's always been special. He always is one of those guys who just knew where the ball was. He's always one of those guys who hit the ball hard. I think the mechanical adjustment he made with his hands last year really allowed him to open up and develop that power and drive the ball to all fields. He's incredibly aggressive. I don't think that's pretty obvious. And it's okay to be aggressive. It's just balancing out the pitches you're going to swing at need to be in the strike zone rather than outside the strike zone. That's a really hard thing. I mean, he's in AA, he's still producing, but there's going to be a point when those pitches are better. When those pitches are better, those pitches are a ball off the plate rather than two balls off the plate, and he's going to not be able to swing at them, or he's going to get out. So I think we really focus. I don't want to say. I mean, obviously it's approach, but I think balancing. It's okay to be aggressive, but handling the pitches within the strike zone is where he really needs to do his damage, and laying off the pitches outside. He can still be aggressive, but they have to be in the strike zone. And I think that's I don't think he doesn't understand the strike zone. He just likes to swing a lot. And he's
Fun,
had a lot,
man.
and he doesn't walk a lot either. So there's not a lot of room for error, but at the same time, I think he has a skill set and he's shown the ability to make adjustments and improve. That I feel like that is an area that he can continue to grow on and get better as he does, get to the upper levels. Because there were certainly, whenever we move someone, hey, how is this guy going to react to upper level pitching? How is this guy going to react to AA pitching? He's going to be able to do what he did in Greenville in AA. And in some ways, he's honestly probably even doing better than he was in Greenville. And, his chase rate has declined a little bit over time. And this is not something that just happens overnight. It's not like, hey, Sadan, don't swing at those pitches above the zone. Okay, got it. And then he's all of a sudden fixed.
Right.
Like this is a lot of, early work. This is a lot of drills. This is a lot of different things that we're doing, showing him the damage that he does when he makes contact in the zone and the damage that he does when he makes contact out of the zone. The discrepancies between, hey, if you swing at pitches and make contact in the zone, you're really good. If you swing and make contact pitches outside the zone, you're okay. But we want you to be really good. So we need to do this more and better. So, he's a very intelligent player. Like I said, makes adjustments, really quick. Obviously, the ability to play center and short and just kind of do that at any time. Just the instincts, the natural baseball ability, it's all there. So, again, at the upper levels, these are small things, yet it's a big thing that he's going to have to work on to really be an impactful player. Continue to be an impactful player in AAA and in the big leagues. So that's where I kind of would say that, most of the focus is on, and, he's obviously very aware of it. It's not something that just takes a day. It's a process. It's time, it's effort. It's, grinding out some of that early work and, transitioning to that into the field. And there's going to be some bad days. There's going to be some good days, but I think we're seeing steady progress in that area.
All right. And I guess just to kind of finish up in AAA with, there's one position player I want to ask about, and then, we can kind of the arms that I guess they're not AAA arms right now because they're basically keeping the major league team afloat in a way that's really kind of incredible to see. That I'm sure you must be kind of thrilled to see the way they've been able to do that. But I guess before we transition to that, I'd be kind of remiss not to ask about Tristan Casas, who of course is, dealing with the ankle thing, finally started a rehab assignment, which is great to see. But, obviously the injury being one thing aside, seems like he's a guy who's really close to being able to contribute at the major league level himself, was hitting the ball really hard. You mentioned, doing damage on pitches. I mean, he seemed like he might've been the most unlucky guy in terms of how hard he was hitting the ball and the results he was getting. But, as far as Casas goes, how close do you think he is? And kind of how, is there something left for him, or is it just kind of like getting there, getting at bats in AAA and just the opportunity coming available?
Yeah, I think the last two things you said are really the biggest. To me, coming into this year, getting at bats at the upper levels is really important. Last year was a weird year for him. It was a great year for him personally, probably not the best developmentally, just because he didn't have the consistent at bats he wanted to have in AA. Hey, he got to play in the Olympics. He was incredible. What an amazing experience. And I think him playing in, that type of baseball arena really showed him how excited he was to eventually be a major leaguer. The energy, playing for a team and everyone pulling for one thing. I think that was something that I saw out of him that I didn't kind of realize. He loved the idea of being on that team and pushing for the gold medal, just like a major league team pushes for, a World Series. It's different in the minor league. Obviously, these guys are close knit. They're wanting to win. But at the same time, they're also trying to do individual things to help impact the major league roster. So that was something that was really, really big for him. Obviously the at bats being a big thing. He's hit the ball really hard. He made a conscious effort to change his approach this year. To maybe, I don't, sell out is not the right word, but look to drive the baseball a little bit more consistently. And we've seen him be able to do that. He is very aware of his process and what he does. The change in batting stance, the open, at times he's been really open. He's choked up. He's done all these things. And those were all his way of figuring out to where he needs to be. All of the early areas of a hitter that felt like he needed to work on to eventually get to where he is now, where he has an understanding of the strike zone. He can battle with two strikes. He can hit the ball the other way. but he can also drive the baseball he wants to. And I think we're seeing that kind of last piece of driving the baseball now more consistently happen at AAA. And, again, facing upper level pitching, I think facing Bello, guys that are going to challenge him a little bit more up the strike zone, those are hard things for younger hitters because they're just not seeing that. A guy that is able to throw 95 plus up in the zone consistently when they can do it. I think we saw with JD, with Durant at times in the big leagues, you can't swing at all those pitches because you're not going to hit it. It's a hard pitch to hit. There's a reason why guys are elevating four-seam fastballs at the top above the strike zone because they're really hard to hit. Mm-hmm. And I think the hardest thing to do is lay off those pitches. So he's very conscious of that and working on that. And of course he's close. I mean, he's major league depth for us as a healthy player. We went into spring training and I remember telling him, hey, you're major league depth, you're in AAA, and he had the biggest smile on his face. He's ready. It's just a question of time. And, we've talked about this before, and Heim has obviously mentioned this a ton of times. We're not going to call up the guy to save the team or save the roster, come in and play first base and say, hey, Tristan, you're batting third, help us win the pennant.
Right.
We're going to send him up and have him go up when we feel like he's prepared and ready and can help contribute to success for himself and the team. So, there's certainly a balance of that. Sometimes there are certain factors that change the timing of those things that happen. Like, Jeter Downs went up at a time of need as an infielder. And I feel like I've seen a completely different Jeter Downs since that happened.
Yeah.
So, being aware of those types of things and, obviously getting back healthy, just getting those bats is an important thing, continuing to face that pitching and just, continuing to refine some of the smaller things that he needs to work on defensively. He's a plus defender. He does, to me, like that's something that's not talked about enough. I mean, he's a huge guy, catches everything, scoops everything. I mean, that is an incredible piece of his game. He's a smart base runner. He's just a smart baseball player. So, getting healthy, that to me is number one. And we're excited for him to hopefully come back in the near future.
Nice. And then I guess just to wrap up, and I know we're going on the long side here, but like I mentioned, those AAA arms led of course by the other Futures game, at least guy that got named to it, who I believe who has been replaced actually at this point in Brayan Bello. And that whole crew, you've got Winkowski, Siebold, Cutter Crawford, who has been up and down and made adjustments, like you said, when he went back down. It seems like just get everyone down, have them go up, have them go back down, work with Abby, and then go back up and they're good, is apparently how it works. But that's not actually how it works, of course. I mean, you could probably even throw Chris Murphy in there. That group, I should ask about Bello and in particular the development that he's had. It seems like he's a guy we mentioned on the show year over year. There is something that gets better every year with him, or something improves noticeably, or, all of a sudden, oh, hey, here's a 2-seam and I'm going to have a 3-to-1 ground ball to fly ball ratio now. Great. And strike out the town. As far as his development goes, I mean, what have you seen as he's moved through the system, and kind of as you reflect on that, what is there any big picture to take there? And I guess generally with that group, how does it reflect on this pitching development apparatus, I guess, that you all have developed that, of course, started with Brian Bannister coming in and now Sean Havlin, Chris Mears and them are taking over. Does it reflect on that? And how so? Is there anything in particular that stands out between Bello specifically and then with that group generally?
I think for Bello, it's just a really good organizational wide effort. You get a guy who's internationally scouted, signed for low money, goes to DSL, didn't pitch in Lowell, but FCL to A ball, and a credit to the coaches that he's working with on a daily basis, as well as the player. I had mentioned this earlier, like needing the players to buy in and willingness to fail and try new things and challenge themselves. He came out of COVID a different guy, and he put on weight. He became more athletic. He got stronger. He added fastball velocity, which, quite frankly, like to me is
always nice,
pretty big difference maker in terms of, his fastball. So, coming out of COVID, that 4-seam fastball immediately was more interesting because it had better velo. And then midway through the season that we had, as we talk about pitch design and trying new things, Lance and Javi and Julio they worked on that 2-seamer with him. It really opened up his ability to kind of, I think, utilize his fastball and then his slider and changeup. So obviously he still has the 4-seamer, still looks to elevate that consistently, especially against left-handed hitters, but he has that 2-seamer that can be overpowering at times, moves, I think we saw in the big leagues during his couple starts, almost moves too much. In AAA, he kind of gets some of those swings on those pitches. He maybe got calls on the edges. So I think, continuing to learn to harness that is really important for him. But the confidence, the trust in his stuff, again, the trust in his staff to make small adjustments with whether it be pitch mix or whether it be particular pitches, maybe adding more sweep to his slider at times. Different things that he needs to work on to improve upon. He takes that wholeheartedly and works incredibly hard. He's an incredibly hard worker between starts. Just really, I think, is for a good guy for other pitchers in our organization to look at and say, this guy was a really good pitcher. He's turning himself into a great pitcher because of all the extra work he puts in. Obviously he has a lot of talent and natural ability, but there's so much more to it. I don't think there's any Hall of Fame baseball players that would say, I just was good. They always are taking it to that next level because they push themselves. They spend extra time in the weight room. They spend extra time studying. And I think as he gets older and continues to learn the league and understand what he does really well, he's going to continue to get better. And just, really, you kind of mentioned the pitching group, Banny and Bushy, obviously, and Javi, what Javi's done with Julio and Chris Mears and the rest of our pitching group. Just, again, the consistency, the planning from when a player gets in here, here's what our expectations are, here's our plan, here are our philosophies, challenging in the strike zone, being willing to make adjustments, being athletic. I think that's something that we've really focused on with our young players and even our older players that, if you watch these guys, whether it be them playing catch, they're moving around. They're not just doing stand still. Let's throw the ball 5 feet, 5 throws and go back 10 feet. It's athletic throwing program where they're doing different things to help prepare themselves to throw because pitching is athletic. A lot of pitchers, or not a lot of pitchers, but there's some really good pitchers that started out at shortstop, and their athleticism, I think, helps them on the mound, helps them to generate velocity, helps them to lose their lower half. So allowing some of our pitchers to do that when they first get into the organization to all the way up to the upper levels, I think has really transformed our group. And again, I think the willingness for, medical strength, other people within the office to be open to some changes that we've made over the last couple of years and be aggressive with some of the things we've done, I think is the reason why we've seen some of this progress by some of these guys. And again, all goes back to the players, willingness to try different things, try new things, be uncomfortable, and maybe fail at times to ultimately get to where they need to be, and not allow external noise or people that think, you're going to be this player because of this reason, that any reason why you can't be someone else or someone even better than what we think. We don't put ceilings on our players. We don't limit where these guys could be or who they could be. That's for them to decide, and ultimately the work that they put in and the time that they provide on the field, all the work they're putting in on the field, ultimately will determine how they present in the big leagues and in the upper levels to get that opportunity. So it's a group effort. Ton of credit to Javi. His willingness to. I think we hate using the word "think outside the box" because that should just be how we think. It's not just think outside. We should be thinking progressively. We should be thinking to push things forward. We shouldn't just be happy with where we are because everyone else is trying to get better. And that's something that Javi, the pitching group does incredibly well, and our hitting group does it as well. It's a little bit easier sometimes with pitch data and some of the tech we have on the pitching side to push some of this, but it's a group effort. The continuity between the big leagues and the minor leagues, I think, has transitioned incredibly well over years. There's a ton of relationships, there's a ton of communication, and like I said earlier, what they're doing in the big leagues, when guys are going from AAA to the big leagues, it's an easy transition because they know what they're working on, how those things are working, because the communication, the conversations are being had daily, and then even more, more specifically when those moves actually happen.
One thing I noticed when Bello was called up is it seemed like it had a really big impact on the younger players in the organization. There were those videos coming out of the DSL. You obviously brought the FCL guys to his start in Tampa. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is for them to kind of see a development success story like him, getting up to the majors where he started? As you said, he didn't sign for big money. He signed late. I think he signed when he was 18.
He was 18, yeah.
How important is it that the younger players are seeing the pipeline and kind of the fruits of all the work that these guys that are a few levels ahead of them paying off when they're helping the big league club this year?
Yeah, whenever you have a homegrown player, that obviously is a incredibly impactful for the organization. Like I said, players aren't developed by just player development. They're developed by their families. They're developed by other departments. They're developed by all the support staff that are had within PD, which is vast these days. So to say, when we tell them, you need to do these types of things to create a foundation, to work, to be consistent, to ultimately make the big leagues, and we can point to someone like Brian Bello who's done that, it makes things easier. It allows buy-in. when I go to the DSL, when I go to the Dominican, Jose Zapata, who's our field coordinator, is talking about Boston. Is talking about Fenway. That's where those guys want to be. When those guys get to Fort Myers, that's not the goal. The goal is to get to Boston. So I think that is the expectation of all of our players, and to see those guys, someone especially who's young and did it. I don't want to say quick, but there are guys that are still in this organization that knew him when he was younger and when he was in the lower levels. To see him make that progress all the way up is incredibly exciting. And I think it helps our staff too. It's like, hey, I'm seeing my work and effort pay off. We tried these things work, and now he's impacting the major league club. I think the team had that in recent years, with Jackie and Mookie and Xander. These guys, when they're come from little kids to becoming superstars of the big leagues, obviously it's the player, but I think it really sheds a light on the hard work and the time that the player development staff, the scouting staff, all the different parts of the organization, all the work that they put in, the effort they put in, to see these guys succeed. It's like one of the hardest things about it being a teacher is you teach in a grade, and they go up to the next grade and they graduate. You don't really ever see them again. You just know them as second graders. One of the great things about player development, one of my passions, is being able to see these guys progress from age 17, 18 to being 25-year-old superstars in the big leagues. Like Devers, the first time I saw him was in the DSL. He was a little kid and taking BP, and I was like, oh, he's pretty interesting. And next thing you know, he's the face of the franchise at certain times, right. and it hits the ball a long way. So those things are incredibly special for, I know, myself and for the group, especially when you're here to see it happen. Even if you're new, I know like Chad Tracy, to see guys go from AAA, whether it be having some struggles or ups and downs, and then go immediately make an impact. Like again, Jeter, that means a lot to, I know, that group, to Jose Flores, to Chad Tracy, to Getty, to Mike Montville. That means a ton to those guys, to see what, the work that they're putting in is paying dividends up in Boston.
And one thing, looking back at my notes, Brian, I was going to throw you a softball about this going in, but the other thing that we got to talk to you a little bit about in camp, because this was coming up, you ran the marathon this year, sub 4, by the way. Good job. I don't know that I've talked to you about this since then. Congrats. That's great.
Thank you.
But one thing I wanted to make sure you got a chance to talk about really quick is you ran the marathon for a great cause in the organization called Why Not Devon. And I just want to, if you want to kind of throw out there what they do, and if there's a way people can, support it as well, if we can provide any kind of platform for that too. Why don't you talk about, what that is, how you got involved in, and how folks can support it?
Yeah. Why Not Devon? Devon Suau, a local family in Framingham where I am, close to the age of my son, and he ended up passing away of DIPG, a rare cancerous brain tumor. And the organization that his mom, Christine, put together is basically, because it's a terminal illness, there's not a lot of funding. So a lot of the funding that is done, it goes to families basically to help get research for this particular disease. So it goes directly to these families. The research to help support them, because it's incredibly expensive for the research, and it's just a disease that is incredibly sad. It happens in a lot of young kids, and it's terminal. So there has not been any survivors of it. The power and the energy and the time that Christine puts into this is incredible. I mean, she's such an inspiration to be able to run the marathon for her and her family. I believe she's run a bunch of them, but to be able to do that for her, and I think, myself, not as much, but we're lucky at times to have a bit of a platform through our roles and through our jobs. And I thought it was a good opportunity to do that and provide that. Next time, hopefully it's not having to run a marathon, but nonetheless, it was something really cool to be able to do, and bragging rights in the office, because I think I'm the only one who's ran a full marathon. So,
oh, wow.
But it was an incredible experience. It certainly wasn't for the marathon; it was for the cause, and to be able to bring light to that for Christine and Devin, and I think for my family as well. I think you try to teach your kids to do things for other people, and how lucky we are and how lucky people can be, and things are hard for a lot of people these days. So I think anytime you can bring support to those types of causes is incredibly important.
Nice. And we can throw a link in the show notes if you're listening. That we'll throw a link to the organization, and it'll be on whatever podcatcher you're listening on. Just flip to the side or whatever it is you have to do. Cool. All right. Lightning round, I guess, and then we'll finally set you free. But really quick here, just going through some quick things. First, best part about the gig that you've got right now.
I mean, I think the best part for me, is growing up here and being a part of the Red Sox. Helping, grow and develop potential players that can help impact the World Series championship. I've been lucky enough to win 2 of them, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And to have an ownership group and have a front office and people that are trying to do that on a yearly basis is something I definitely don't take for granted. To know that every day, every year, you're trying to win and make the playoffs and get a World Series, that there's nothing better than that. So that is very lucky to be a part of an organization that's like that, a city like this, fan base. People are, because I was one of them, are crazy here, but I think that just is the passion, the care, the want to win and do well. And I think that is evident in, Fenway and Worcester and all of our affiliates. So I think that's the best part, being a person from here and trying to help provide that for families and friends at times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then most frustrating part of the job, if there is one that comes to mind.
It's not frustrating, it's a grind, these roles. And, I think whenever, fans talk and they question, we're probably having the same questions ourselves. And, we lose sleep over losses and tough losses. And, when players struggle and players get hurt, those are things that I think leave us all up at night. It's a, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year type role. And it's definitely exciting. I think that is also, every day is different, but it could be, that's why I have short hair, because I think I'm getting gray. But it can be a grind. It certainly can be a grind, and you want to provide and communicate and have conversations with people. And I feel like there's not enough time at times to be able to do that as much as I can. I think that, as I said a few times, like, communication, relationships are so important, and trying to make sure you're on top of those things with staff, with players, can be daunting at times. As important as it is, you want to make sure you can do that. But I also feel like that's one of the hardest things to be able to do, just because of the time in the day. I can't call every player, I can't call every staff member every day, but I want to make sure that they know that, I'm following what they're doing. I care about what they're doing, and our group cares about what they're doing. So balancing all those things, I think, is not a bad part, but it's just a hard part. There's nothing I don't like about this job or working at baseball. It's a dream come true, really.
Sure. And then favorite story or memory working in player development with the Red Sox, if there's one that comes to mind. I know this can be kind of tough to think of.
I think for play, I mean, I had mentioned 13 with bullpen, like being able to run when we won the World Series. I'd say PD was probably just the World Series in 18, being down in the clubhouse and in the field at Dodger Stadium, and seeing, the players that were, I think at that time, at one point we had 8 homegrown players on the field, and having a small piece of that. And just, it's such a incredible, when you dream of winning World Series as a kid, as a player, then you win as a staff member. It's like, wow, it's really hard to put into words. You get World Series ring, and it's like, oh my God, like I have 2 World Series rings. So that to me is just incredible. But I think the individual success stories of our players, when they're able to, even someone like, Jeter Downs, Josh Winkowski, when these guys go up, it's special. It hits home every single time. And it means a lot, because like I said, the time and effort that goes in, it's family. It really is. Like, I don't think we take that lightly, because it's these kids' dreams. Like, they want to be big leaguers, and to get that call, that, it's pretty cool to call a manager or be there when you get to tell someone they're going to the big leagues. Like, that's a pretty cool feeling.
Can we mandate the camera in the manager's office in AAA, please? Like, I know with Jeter, like, that wasn't possible because he was busy, he was asleep. Well, he was asleep, missed a bunch of calls, and then thought he was getting traded. Which I guess is understandable when you're him, and it's happened twice.
Yeah. But it's not always as glamorous as people think. I think we try to do it in a certain way. Trace, I know, we've had other managers that have had certain ways where they're trying to, I think Trace said to Jeter, he's like, you got to answer your phone. He's like, don't you want to go to the big leagues? And he was like, what? I think there's always different ways to. I can joke about this now, but when we told Bello he was going to the Futures game, he came out of the office and everyone thought he was going to the big leagues, and we were like, no.
Oh no,
just the Futures game.
Wait, because so how long ago did he know? Is that so that because
we know a little bit before.
You know a little bit before, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it was not the greatest, but
we knew it worked out in the end.
Yeah, it worked out. We knew he was going to the big
leagues.
it was a good one. But yeah, not as glamorous. I think there's a balance. Like I think what you guys do and what players do on social media is great insight into the game. I also think there's some stuff personally that is good to keep private and kind of left to the imagination, I guess,
Sure.
about maybe how things are done. But that's a pretty special moment for sure. No matter what level it is, whether it be AA to AAA, whether it be AAA to the big leagues, A ball, FCL to Salem is a big one for a lot of guys that
Sure.
have only been to Florida and just coming from the Dominican. So those are always pretty special.
Especially now the guys are down there for a couple of years, just normally, because that's how the development path works now sometimes. And then last one, feel free to duck this, because I've left this fairly open-ended on purpose just to not kind of pin you in. And it's still not an easy one, but if you have a bold prediction, whether it's for the rest of the year, whether it's moving forward, whether it's player specific, whether it's general, an opportunity to throw one out there if anything has come to mind. But again, I know this is hard, so if you need to duck it, go ahead. But it would be interesting to see what comes to mind for you for that.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much insight into what we think is going to happen with our players. So
all right. Cagey.
I would say bold, success, more success out of
more
our
success.
Our players. There we go. That's a bold
Okay.
prediction, I think. Yeah, it's so hard. I think part of our job is to evaluate and predict, which is the hardest thing to do, obviously.
Sure.
I sometimes winning doesn't always come with development. Sometimes development doesn't always come with winning. It's a weird combination. We want to do both those things together. But ultimately, developing these guys to make an impact in the big leagues, I feel pretty confident that I can predict that will continue to happen after the All-Star break this year. And we have a lot of exciting talent, a lot of exciting players at the upper levels and helping in the big leagues and at the lower levels as well. The draft is right around the corner. That's an incredibly exciting time to bring in new players, new energy to this organization. So I'll predict more success. But I think, success is just these guys continue to work hard and continue to get better every day.
Nice. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Best of luck with the rest of the season, Brayan. Best of luck with the crop of 15 to 20 new guys you're about to get in a few days here / a few weeks by the time they sign, and all the other crap that has to happen before they get to you happens. But best of luck with all of that. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a good sport about us running long per usual as we do on these. But it's been a pleasure, and hopefully it won't be the last time either.
Not a problem. Thanks so much for having me, guys.